Welcome everyone to the Packers News Thursday live chat alongside Ryan Wood. I am Olivia Reiner. The Packers hit the practice field for the final time this week, gearing up for their Saturday game against the Carolina Panthers. We will take a look at the injury report, get you up to speed on what you need to know heading into Saturday's game. Plus, we'll also take some of your questions, as always. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, leave us a question, leave us a comment, whatever is on your mind. Ryan and I want to hear from you. We'll get to some of your thoughts toward the end of our conversation today. Panthers running back Christian McCaffrey is doubtful to play in this upcoming Saturday's game with a thigh injury. McCaffrey has missed 10 games this season, dealing with a variety of different injuries. A lot has changed since last season with McCaffrey. Last season, he became the third player in NFL history to post both 1,000 rushing yards and receiving yards. Now he has hardly played this season. He'd probably give the Packers' run defense fits on the ground. However, they're not going to have to face him. How much do the Packers need that experience, though, against a really quality running back in someone like Christian McCaffrey?
Well, Olivia, you were on the Zoom call yesterday when I asked Mike Pettin, would part of you want to see Christian McCaffrey to give you run defense to work? And he laughed at me. So if that gives you any indication, no. And he even said, I'll be honest, no. The answer is no. You never root for anyone to be injured. You don't want them to, you want to be on the field healthy and all that, especially if it's long term. But if it takes another week for his thigh to heal, they'll be okay with that. And Kenny Clark and Adrian Amos today said basically the same thing. Adrian Amos said he never really has it in his mind that he's upset that the other team doesn't have their best player. So, I mean, it sounds obvious, but I don't know. I thought it was less obvious in my mind, I guess, because this is a run defense that has been very maligned. You guys watched the NFC Championship game last year. You've seen them over the last two seasons. You know the story there. And they're, if they had to play New Orleans, they're going to see Kamara, right? So to get to work. But no, and it's a good reason why. If they win the next three games, they're the number one seed, and they have an NFC Championship game potentially at Lambeau Field. So as Mike Pettin said, they just want to win, and they have a much better chance of winning without Christian McCaffrey this week.
Christian McCaffrey isn't the only injured Panthers player. Starting left tackle Russell Okung is dealing with a calf injury. He is listed as questionable heading into this Saturday's game. Okung and right tackle Taylor Moton have had a really strong season together. They've only allowed 5 sacks on quarterback Teddy Bridgewater. If Okung is healthy enough to play, how challenging is it going to be for the outside linebackers of the Green Bay Packers to get pressure on Bridgewater?
Yeah, I would imagine that similar to the run defense looking at Christian McCaffrey and say, move along now. It's if they can go without Russell Okung this week, they'd be just fine with that too, because Russell Okung, formerly one of the better tackles in the league when he's healthy, but he just hasn't been healthy the last 2 seasons. It's kind of the same story for them. So it's going to be really interesting, Olivia, to see if Rashawn Gary can continue this rise that he's been on. And no Russell Okung would help that. But 2.5 sacks last 2 weeks. He had 2 sacks his rookie season, 5 sacks on the season. Simple math, he's more than doubled his rookie sack production. If he can close these last 3 games really strong going in the playoffs, that would do a lot for this pass rush.
Rashawn Gary was on the injury report this week dealing with a hip injury. He was limited in practice all week. However, good news, Packers fans. Rashawn Gary is off of the injury report. He does not have an injury designation, and he should be good to go for Saturday. Let's take a look at the big picture as the Packers gear up for the final 3 games of the regular season. Head coach Matt LaFleur is known to say, gotta go 1-0 every single week. It is practically his nickname at this point. However, the Packers know what they have to play for in these final 3 games. If they win the NFC, they have an opportunity not only for a first-round bye, but also to have home field advantage in the playoffs. How focused are the Packers on what could be the big picture?
More than I can remember them being in the past. Look, this team has won 7 of the last 10 NFC North Division titles. This is very familiar ground for them. They're used to playing for playoff seeding in December, and that's where they're playing right now. So there's nothing new here, but what seems different to me at least, and I'm curious, Olivia, if you got the same kind of impression in the post-game Zooms in Detroit, but there's a very larger understanding of what's at play here. They know the 1 seed is out there, and yeah, they're wearing the shirts and they've got the hat on, the NFC North champion hat, just like they have 70% of the last decade. But there is that understanding of this is a 1 seed. You won the next 3 games. You're 2 home games away from the Super Bowl. It's a really advantageous position to be in, obviously. So I did ask Matt LaFleur today if because Devontae Adams admitted yesterday, like, yeah, they're talking about that. Like that's a discussion. And Matt LaFleur is Mr. 1-0. I mean, if you want a nickname for him, that is the nickname. He's Mr. 1-0. So I asked if he partakes in that discussion at all, or if it's just exclusive 1-0. That's all he says, and just let the players do their thing. And he basically kind of popped a joke and said, I hope they know well enough not to talk like that around me. No, Matt LaFleur is only exclusively speaking 1-0 this week, beating the Panthers, but his players know exactly what's at stake in these 3 games as a whole.
Got to go 1-0. Got to do your 111th. Lots of LaFleurisms that have popped up over the last couple of seasons in his time in Green Bay. Let us head over to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube for some of your questions right now. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Good to see you. Let's start with Josh over on Facebook. Josh always has a good free agency question for us, so lay it on us, Josh. Josh says, with Drew Rosenhaus being running back Aaron Jones' agent and him not expecting anything but top dollar, will that make it hard for the Packers to sign him? And do you expect Aaron Jones to hit free agency next season? If you missed the news over the last couple of days, running back Aaron Jones announced that he made an agent change. Drew Rosenhaus is now part of his representation. It's also his brother's representation, Alvin Jones, who is currently a free agent linebacker. What does the coaching change say about the status of Jones' contract discussions with the Packers?
Well, Olivia, you don't fire an agent because you want less money, and you don't change agents because you're happy with how the negotiations are going. You don't do that. If you're happy with how the negotiations are going, you continue the negotiations with that agent. So it's common sense, right? I mean, it shows it's a step away from a reunion with the Packers. I think it's way too early to say that he won't be back. Certainly, I imagine that the Packers are going to continue dialogue. It's really early, so we'll have to see if that happens. But it's easy to foresee. But again, you don't change agents if you're looking for less money. Aaron Jones wants his market value. He's made that very clear. He's a dynamic superstar talent. He saw Alvin Kamara. He saw Dalvin Cook get theirs early this season. He's still waiting. And you can imagine that the waiting is frustrating. So I don't get the sense that Aaron Jones is going to settle for a team-friendly hometown discount. If the Packers were going to settle for something more than that, they probably would have signed him already. So it's going in the wrong direction, but it's too early to say that it's going to end up there eventually.
Thanks so much, Josh, for a great question as always. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Let's go over to Southwest Florida Packers Fan Club. Hope you're doing well out on the East Coast. I doubt you have the same snow that my family members out on the East Coast are dealing with right now. They say that inside linebacker Kamal Martin needs more reps. Kamal Martin only played about 18 or 19% of the defensive snaps this past weekend against the Detroit Lions. Inside linebackers Christian Kirksey and Chris Barnes were used far more. They played around half of the defensive snaps. Why is an undrafted free agent like Chris Barnes getting prioritized over Kamal Martin, who was taken in the 5th round of this year's draft?
He's been good. Chris Barnes has been really good for an undrafted guy. For an undrafted guy who they cut out of camp. They could have lost him. It's still a pretty amazing part of his story. But yeah, it's that simple. He's been good. Both of those guys, both Chris Barnes and Kamal Martin, have missed time because of injuries. In Chris Barnes' case, also COVID-19. But Chris Barnes is back, and that's just been the way that they've rolled. And I think both of those guys are young, promising players. Certainly, the future is brighter at this point than I would have thought going into the season. But that's just the way it's shaken out. And I think the big thing at that position, I know we've written about it at PackersNews, but the big thing is that they're getting two true inside linebackers on the field more often because they have the athleticism there in the second level to not get exposed in pass coverage. And the more they're able to do that at the expense of not having a third safety drop down to the box as kind of a small nickel linebacker, the more they're able to do that, the beefier they'll be against the run. And that's big going forward if you can have a bigger, sturdier defensive front against the run.
Thanks so much, Southwest Florida Packers fan club. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Let's go over to Periscope. Smumster says that they saw Patrick Taylor practice. Will he be used during the season or not until next season? Patrick Taylor is a running back out of Memphis. He injured his foot in his senior season of football, and he missed about half of the games. And then when he signed with the Packers as an undrafted free agent in 2020, he was more or less, as soon as training camp started, immediately placed on the non-football injury list, where he has remained, and he currently remains. However, he did return to practice today. The Packers have 21 days before they need to decide what to do with him, whether or not they want to put him on the roster, put him on the practice squad, or cut him. How likely is it that Taylor sees any sort of playing time this season?
Are we counting injuries or are we turning injuries off? If there's no injuries, I just don't see it happening. If there are injuries, you never know. I mean, certainly if the depth chart gets thin there, then sure it could happen. But barring no injuries, Matt LaFleur said today about the backfield that he sees it as 3 starting running backs, counting A.J. Dillon, who's back from COVID-19. So there's not a lot to go around because A.J. Dillon, if he's counted as a starting running back, he hasn't played much. So, I know the questions about Patrick Taylor, but I did think it was interesting that Adam Stinovich, the offensive line coach, said yesterday that Simon Stepaniak is a guy that could play at some point this season. He could be available come maybe playoff time. Not next week, but Simon Stepaniak is recently off the NFI. He's returning from a torn ACL, and they've been pretty impressed with him as a rookie. So, you want to talk about NFI guys that are back, that's one to keep an eye on.
Thanks so much, Mumster, for your question. Let's go over to J-Row over on Facebook to continue our conversation about 2021 free agent running back Aaron Jones. They want to know, do you think that the Packers will use the franchise tag on Aaron Jones? The Packers have not shown a willingness to use the franchise tag on many of their players in recent years. How likely is it that they would choose to use the one-year tag before making a long-term decision on Aaron Jones?
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't see the cap space to be able to do that, and it's not a great investment to tag a running back anyway. I think a much more likely scenario if they don't re-sign Aaron Jones is that they do re-sign Jamal Williams, and for a fraction of the cost that it would take to keep Aaron Jones. Their backfield next year is Jamal Williams and A.J. Dillon. I mean, that's still a really formidable. Yeah, it's similar to the situation with Corey Linsley, because Corey Linsley, just like Aaron Jones, 2 really phenomenal players. Like, you can't say anything ill about them as players. It's just that when you look at this roster, they have a ton of depth at those 2 spots. They've got a lot of depth in the backfield. And they've got a lot of interior offensive line depth, a lot of guys that can snap the football. So that's leverage for the team, right? So when you talk about negotiation, that strength is a leverage for the team. I would think much more likely than tagging Aaron Jones is having Jamal Williams and A.J. Dillon.
Thanks so much, J-Row, for your question. Let's go over to Natasha over on Facebook. They want to know, how much more do you think wide receiver Tavon Austin, how much more will he play? What will his role look like against the Carolina Panthers this weekend? Austin was incorporated in the offense a little bit against the Lions. He was on the receiving end of a couple of jet sweep shovel passes, and I think he racked up about 6 to 8 yards. He also fielded a punt return. How much more do you anticipate LaFleur using Austin, especially in the offense?
Well, both of his catches, he only played like 4 snaps, so I think maybe all 4 of the snaps might have been in the opening script. And Matt LaFleur said that it was a lot easier to script him into the offense than to have him kind of rotate in off the sideline as the game progressed. The reason for that is because those opening script plays, those are predetermined. I mean, you know what those are going in. So you can give Tavon Austin, here's your plays that you're going to be playing. This is when you'll be playing it, opening drive, opening 2 drives maybe, and just have him focus on that. It's a digestible portion for the week. You would expect that would grow. That was his first game. You expect that it would grow as over these next 3 games going into the playoffs as he becomes more familiar and comfortable with the playbook. As far as special teams, he's the punt return. He hasn't been much of a kickoff guy in his career. They used Jamal Williams for that role in Detroit. I wouldn't say never. I asked Matt LaFleur earlier this week if Tavon Austin could be a kickoff guy, even though it hasn't been predominantly used that way, and he did not close the door to that possibility. I don't know if it's likely, but it's certainly a possibility that he could do both. Certainly, though, so long as Tyler Ervin is on IR, he will be feeling bumps.
Thanks so much, Natasha, for your question. Let's go over to Riva over on Facebook. Riva says, do the Packers need to beat the Tennessee Titans next weekend for quarterback Aaron Rodgers to win Most Valuable Player this season? Rodgers leads the league in passer rating, and he leads the league in passing touchdowns. What needs to happen for him in these last few games to beat out someone like Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes for the award this season?
I'm not being facetious when I say this. It's really he has to play better, because right now it's almost a virtual tie. I do think that when you look at last week, I do think Aaron Rodgers might have just pulled a smidge ahead. He's now leading the league in touchdowns, 39. He's 119.7 passer rating, which is ridiculously close to the 122.5 record that he had in 2011, the single season record. I don't think any of us thought that he would be flirting with that at age 37, especially after the last couple seasons. But that leads the league as well. It's the third highest passer rating of all time. It's the highest for any age 30 quarterback of all time. Patrick Mahomes has more yards. He's thrown 4,200 yards. He also has 2 All-Pros instead of just one, with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, as opposed to Devontae Adams. And the 3 interceptions against Miami, that now he has 1 more interception and fewer touchdowns than Aaron Rodgers. So I do think Aaron Rodgers is ahead. If he plays better than Patrick Mahomes through the final 3 games, I think he's going to be the MVP. If he doesn't, if he has a stumble, if he plays poorly against the Titans, for example, absolutely, Patrick Mahomes could still win this thing. So, do the Packers need to beat Tennessee? Well, Rodgers needs to play well, and winning would certainly.
All eyes will be on the Chiefs and the Packers going forward these next few games. However, I think Packers fans might actually want to see the Chiefs win this upcoming weekend, with the fact that they're playing against the New Orleans Saints, who are right in the race with the Packers for the top seed in the NFC. So some conflicting interests all over the place there. Should be a fun weekend for football fans. Let's go over to Facebook for Matthew's question. Matthew wants to know, if the Packers win these next 2 games, will Packers fans see rookie quarterback Jordan Love against the Bears? If the Packers are able to secure that number 1 seed in the NFC, I'm not exactly sure what the scenario looks like, how many games that they need to win in order to secure that. However, how likely is it in any given scenario that the Packers would make rookie quarterback Jordan Love active after he hasn't been active for a single game this season?
3. I mean, so long as the Rams stay on 4 losses, it's going to likely be 3. Because if the Packers and Rams stay on 4, are head-to-head tie with 12-4 records, the conference record would be the same. And so long as they lose 1 more. Right now, they're both 8-2 in the NFC, so their conference record is the same. Their common opponents is also the same. They're both 3-2 against common opponents this season, and so then it goes to the strength of victory tiebreaker. And right now, the Rams have a better strength of victory. And so, because of that, they are very much looking at it. If the Rams play the Seahawks this week, so it could change in a week. Come back to me in a week. But right now, if it stays with the Rams going 12-4, the Packers are going to need to go 13-3.
Thanks so much, Matthew, for your question. Let's go over to John on YouTube. John wants to know, same amount of people will be at the home game, or I suppose John would like to know. So the answer to that is that there will be the same number of people at the game. However, the Packers have chosen to offer tickets to healthcare workers this upcoming weekend against the Panthers. So it'll be a little bit different. It doesn't appear that they're going to be employees of the team and their family members. Instead, they're showing the community's support for the healthcare workers that have helped us throughout this pandemic. So a little bit of a different gesture, still about 250 people total with healthcare workers and their immediate household families. Ryan, anything to add to that?
As they should. I think it's a great gesture. Healthcare, I mean, the healthcare professionals are the heroes of 2020. I think we all know that. I also thought it was a really good gesture what the NFL is doing with potentially inviting healthcare workers to the Super Bowl this year. It's healthcare. If you know a healthcare worker, give them a hug, because they have been heroes this year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John, everyone. On that note, stay healthy, stay safe. We will be back on Saturday to preview the game leading up to game time. 90 minutes before, I'll be live with Pete Doherty back over on Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube. So make sure, bring your questions, bring your pregame snacks, whatever you want to do. We will be there. For Ryan Wood, I am Olivia Reiner. We'll see you next time.